choice. Maybe it was a single thing that we said in a moment of emotion or stress that caused friction or caused harm in a relationship. Maybe it was a series of mistakes. Maybe it was a pattern that lasted for days or weeks or months or even years that potentially took us away from the truth, that harmed our relationship with God, harmed our reputations, harmed our relationships with others. Whatever the case is, there is a 0% chance that your greatest or my greatest failure is recorded in Scripture for generations of people to read and reflect on. Unfortunately, David's darkest moment is recorded for us. Unfortunately, perhaps for him, but fortunately for us, because we can glean wisdom from David's fall and his subsequent redemption. This morning, we're going to look at 2 Samuel chapter 11. David was known as a man after God's own heart. He was a good man. He was a moral man. He loved the Lord with everything that he had. But despite that love and despite that commitment to serving God faithfully, he made some mistakes and he made some doozies. He made some very bad choices. And this morning, we're going to explore those choices. We're going to see what the Bible says about David's sin with Bathsheba and his subsequent attempts to try and conceal or cover up those poor choices. 1 Kings chapter 15 and verse 5 records that David did what was right in the eyes of the Lord and did not turn aside from anything that he commanded him all the days of his life, except in the matter of Uriah the Hittite. This morning, we're going to discuss and explore David's perhaps darkest spiritual moment from the perspective of 1 Kings 15:5 and see what the Bible has to say about David's fall. 2 Samuel chapter 11, number 1, when surprised by temptation, David chose self-indulgence. When surprised by temptation, David chose self-indulgence. In the spring of the year, the time when kings go out to battle, David sent Joab and his servants with him and all Israel, and they ravaged the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained at Jerusalem. Verse 2. It happened late one afternoon when David arose from his couch and was walking on the roof of the king's house that he saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. And David sent and inquired about the woman, and one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" So David sent messengers and took her, and she came to him, and he lay with her. Now she had been purifying herself from her uncleanness. Then she returned to her house, and the woman conceived, and she sent and told David, "I am pregnant." Notice that David did nothing wrong up through verse 2. He arose from his couch. He was walking on the roof of the king's house. He saw from the roof a woman bathing, and the woman was very beautiful. Stop right there. David hasn't done anything wrong yet. It is not a sin to see something. It is not a sin to be tempted to pursue that sight with covetousness or lust in this case. David had done nothing wrong. However, he indulged himself. He went further. He lusted. He spent time thinking about her in a way that was inappropriate. He's already a married man. He has multiple wives, and he's looking at another man's wife with a desire to have her and to be with her. And so he sent, verse 3, and inquired about the woman. And one said, "Is not this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" He is surprised by temptation. There's no instance, there's no evidence to believe that either David meant to see Bathsheba or that Bathsheba meant to be sent or meant to be seen, as it were. There's no indication that either one of them had bad motives at the beginning. However, David chose self-indulgence. And I want to take a brief detour for just a moment. Look in Genesis chapter 3. Genesis chapter 3. There's an interesting breakdown or outline that we can see from 2 Samuel chapter 11. David saw Bathsheba. He noticed that she was beautiful. He coveted her. He saw her, he coveted her, and he took her. Well, look in Genesis chapter 3, and we're going to see the exact same language. Genesis chapter 3, look in verse 6. So when the woman, that is Eve, saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was a delight to the eyes, and that the tree was to be desired or coveted to make one wise, she took of its fruit and ate, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her. She saw, she coveted, she took. Finally, look in Joshua chapter 7. Look in Joshua chapter 7. This is the case of Achan and the sin that he committed in the battle of Jericho. He took of the accursed thing, which God said was not to be taken. He took things that did not belong to him, and he hid them in his tent. Go to Joshua chapter 7 and verse 20. Verse 20. And Achan answered Joshua, "Truly, I have sinned against the Lord God of Israel, and this is what I did." Verse 21. "When I saw among the spoil a beautiful cloak from Shinar and 200 shekels of silver and a bar of gold weighing 50 shekels, then I coveted them and took them." I saw, I coveted, I took. We see the same language expressed across three completely disjointed, separate instances. I saw, I coveted, I took. David did not sin in seeing. The sin began when he coveted and when he took. He was surprised by temptation, but he pursued that temptation and he chose self-indulgence, and therefore he sinned. Point number 2, when threatened with exposure, David stooped to treachery. When threatened with exposure, David stooped to treachery. Verse 5, the woman, that is Bathsheba, conceived, and she sent and told David, "I'm pregnant. I'm expecting." So David, what are you going to do? You're at a crossroads here. You've committed adultery. Under the law of Moses, any two people who are found to have committed adultery, both individuals are to be put to death. David, as a God-fearing man, knows this. He knows the law. He knows that this is what is required of the law. So David, what are you going to do? This is what he does. David sent word to Joab, that is as David's general, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." And Joab sent Uriah to David. More than likely, estimates say that this is around a 40-mile trip one way. So David asks his general, "Send me Uriah, send me Bathsheba's husband." When Uriah came to him, David asked how Joab was doing, and how the people were doing, and how the war was going. Then David said to Uriah, "Go down to your house and wash your feet." That is, make yourself comfortable. Go home. Spend a night at home, as it were. And Uriah went out of the king's house, and there followed him a present from the king, more than likely food of some sort. He sends a present along with Uriah. What is David trying to do? David is encouraging Uriah, you go home and you get comfortable. You spend the night at home, you spend the night with your wife. Why? He's trying to conceal the fact that David has just slept with Bathsheba, because Uriah has been away for a time, and Uriah is going to know whenever he gets back from war, this child is not mine. I haven't been with my wife for some time, and here she is expecting. That's not my child. So David says, Uriah, you go home, you make yourself comfortable, trying to conceal the fact that he's just slept with Bathsheba, that he has just had relations with Uriah's wife. This is attempt number 1. Notice how Uriah responds in verse 9. But Uriah slept at the door of the king's house with all the servants of his lord, and did not go down to his house. When they told David Uriah did not go down to his house, David said to Uriah, have you not come from a journey? You've just traveled 40 miles. Have you not come from a journey? Why did you not go down to your house? Uriah said to David, the ark and Israel and Judah dwell in booths, and my lord Joab and the servants of my lord are camping in the open field. Shall I then go to my house to eat and to drink and to lie with my wife? As you live and as your soul lives, I will not do this thing. I'm not going to go home and be comfortable while my comrades, while my fellow soldiers are out on the battlefield experiencing all the discomforts and all the difficulties that come with a period of battle. I'm not going to dishonor them in that way. And it's interesting, at least, that Uriah has this sense of honor. I'm not going to be comfortable while the Lord's army is out fighting. And yet, where is David? In verse 1, he's at home. He's comfortable. He's washing his feet, as it were. He's not expending any discomfort on his part. He's exactly where he wants to be. Uriah says, I'm not going to get comfortable while the Lord's army is out fighting. So Uriah says, I'm not going to go home. Then David said to Uriah, this is attempt number 2 in verse 12. Remain here today also, and tomorrow I will send you back. So Uriah remained in Jerusalem that day and the next. And David invited him, and he ate in his presence and drank, so that he made him drunk. In the evening he went out to lie on his couch with the servants of his Lord, but he did not go down to his house. What is David doing now? Well, you have honor, right? You have principles. You're not going to go home and lie with your wife because you have too much honor. Well, David gets him drunk in an attempt to drown out that honor, as it were, to have him inebriated, so therefore he's more than likely going to go home and have relations with his wife. Even then, Uriah does not. He stays and he does not go down to his house. So you're David. What are you going to do? What now? You've just tried 2 attempts. You've already betrayed Uriah, by the way. You've already made that mistake. And in fact, before we go much further with this, let's go ahead and think about the fact that David knows Uriah personally. Uriah wasn't just some random soldier in David's army. Uriah was one of David's mighty men. And this phrase is used in the Old Testament to describe a group of roughly 30 to 40 men in David's kind of elite inner circle. They were the elite forces of Israel's military. And that list is included in 2 Samuel 23 and in 1 Chronicles 11 and verse 10. Uriah the Hittite is mentioned among those 30 to 40 men. Uriah knows David personally, and David knows Uriah. There's a relationship there. So this isn't just David betraying some random soldier in his army. This is David betraying someone who should more than likely be his friend, someone that he knows personally. But go back to chapter 11 and verse 3. David sent and inquired about the woman, that is Bathsheba, and one said, is not this Bathsheba the daughter of Eliam? Who was Eliam? Eliam was also one of the mighty men. So you have Bathsheba's husband and Bathsheba's father are both in this elite special force in Israel's military that are very close to David. It's the equivalent of Jesus' 12 apostles. This is the inner circle for David that keeps him safe, that protects him on the battlefield. It is Bathsheba's dad and Bathsheba's husband. Both of these men are in this elite force. Unfortunately, she was also the granddaughter of a man named Ahithophel. And go with me just a moment to chapter 16. 2 Samuel chapter 16. We know that Eliam was the son of a man named Ahithophel. Who was Ahithophel? Look in 2 Samuel 16, verse 23. Chapter 16, verse 23. Now in those days, the counsel that Ahithophel gave was as if one consulted the word of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel esteemed, both by David and by Absalom. Ahithophel was a prophet. Just like Nathan, just like Samuel, just like Benaiah, or not Benaiah, but Micaiah, and all these other men that are surrounding David that are speaking the word of the Lord. This is Ahithophel's granddaughter, Eliam's daughter, Uriah's wife. David has relationships with pretty much all of the men surrounding Bathsheba. He knows them personally. He hasn't only betrayed his personal relationship with Uriah, but also with Eliam and with Ahithophel. David, what are you going to do? You've tried to convince Uriah, go home, get comfortable, to try and conceal the mistake that he's made. Uriah's honor won't let him do that. And so what does David choose to do? Finally, he says, there's no other choice. If I have to risk being put to death under the law of Moses because of my adultery, I would rather Uriah pay that price as opposed to me. One of us has to die, and David chooses Uriah. So in verse 14, in the morning David wrote a letter to Joab and sent it by the hand of Uriah. In the letter he wrote, set Uriah in the forefront of the hardest fighting. and then draw back from him, that he may be struck down and die. And as Joab was besieging the city, he assigned Uriah to the place where he knew there were valiant men. And the men of the city came out and fought with Joab, and some of the servants of David among the people fell. Uriah the Hittite also died. David, what have you stooped to? You have stooped to treachery. Not only have you tried to trick Uriah into concealing your sin, but now you've just put to death someone that was one of your most elite soldiers. Not only was he a friend, but he was also a personal asset to your kingdom. He kept you safe. And what did you do? You betrayed him. Not only did you betray him, but you had Joab participate in the betrayal. He had Joab orchestrate this such that Uriah was abandoned on the battlefield. Oh, and guess what? Not only did Uriah die, but other servants, other soldiers died in the process as well. So you see, going all the way back to David's first moment of self-indulgence, how sin begins to spread. And we'll make this point again in our final moments and our conclusion. But point number 3, when told of tragedy, David responded with apathy. So you're David. You've fixed your problem. There's no more issue. There's no more chance of being found out because Uriah, Bathsheba's husband, is dead. Keep reading in verse 18. Then Joab sent and told David all the news about the fighting, and he instructed the messenger, when you have finished telling all the news about the fighting to the king, then if the king's anger rises, and if he says to you, why did you go so near the city to fight? Did you not know that they would shoot from the wall? Who killed Abimelech, the son of Jerubbesheth? Did not a woman cast an upper millstone on him from the wall so that he died at Thebes? Why did you go so near the wall? Then you will say, your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. What is Joab afraid of? Joab has just been commanded by David, I want you to orchestrate the battle in such a way that Uriah the Hittite dies. What's the problem? Other people died too. Other servants, other soldiers, they died in the process. So Joab says to this messenger, you're going to go and you're going to talk to David. David's probably going to be upset. He's probably going to be mad because we've just done something very dumb militarily, right? The city was sieged. There was no danger for the people, and you attacked at the wall, the most dangerous part of the entire battle, right? And in the process, you lost multiple soldiers. David is probably going to be upset with you. He's going to be upset with me. But you just go and you tell him, by the way, Uriah the Hittite is also dead. Verse 22, so the messenger went and came and told David all that Joab had sent him to tell. The messenger said to David, the men gained an advantage over us and came out against us in the field, but we drove them back to the entrance of the gate. Then the archers shot at your servants from the wall. Some of the king's servants are dead, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is dead also. If you're David and you have a shred of honor, how are you going to respond? It's a tragedy. Not only a tragedy because of what I've done to Uriah, but because other women's husbands, other people have suffered and are going to suffer because of my own choices, because of my sin. How does David respond? David said to the messenger, thus shall you say to Joab, don't let this matter displease you, for the sword devours now one and now another. Strengthen your attack against the city and overthrow it, and encourage him. What does David say? That's battle. What are you going to do? You know, that's how it goes. We're in a dangerous line of work. He's just lost men intentionally. He's just put to death his own soldiers, and he doesn't care. He's apathetic. This is the fall of David. He's stooped to treachery. He's chose self-indulgence, and now he's in a position where he's apathetic to the lives of his own men. The men who care for him, the men who protect him and do his bidding, who go out and fight against the Canaanites surrounding them and keeping Jerusalem and Judea safe. So what is the point? Why are we talking about this morning? What point of application can we draw from this? The point is that sin spreads. It metastasizes. It grows. It develops. It shifts. It is progressive. It does not stay the same. I can convince myself that I can keep this this one sin, this one thing to myself. God can have the other 99.3%, but this little 0.7% of myself, I'm going to indulge. And God can have the rest, and I'm just going to allow this sin to nurture in my life, and I'm not going to try to fight this temptation anymore. If that's the case, we don't get to be surprised when that bears fruit. Do you think David ever expected, do you think he ever anticipated when he's standing on the roof of his house and he's looking at Bathsheba and he's about to send for her to come into his house, do you ever think that he would have anticipated the circumstances at the end of chapter 11? Never. Don't think he ever would have thought about the potential consequences going this far and the amount of harm that he's causing going this deep. And such is the way of sin. Sin is deceptive. It tricks us into believing that the pleasure is worth it, that it's worth it, and that it's something that we should pursue because we deserve it. It's not something that we should withhold from ourselves. It's something that we should indulge in. David does this, and lo and behold, there are consequences for his fall. So, if it is our attitude that I want to follow Jesus, that I want to be a disciple of Christ, that I want to cling to Him, then I need to get rid of every sin in my life, regardless of the size in my own mind. I can convince myself, and I can twist reality, and I can justify things in my own mind such that this is a small thing that God doesn't care about. It's not a big deal, and everything's going to be okay because He still has the other 99.3%, and so He's going to be happy with what I give Him. Christianity is an all or nothing proposition. And if I convince myself that I can be faithful to God while withholding a part of myself and still choosing to indulge in something that is wrong, it's very likely I'm going to face consequences in this life independently of the next one. I'm not saying that any time we choose to have an inappropriate thought or any time we use an inappropriate word or whatever the case is, any time we sin, that these are going to be the consequences or that the consequences are going to be on this scale. But it might. It might. Anyone who has ever gone out on their spouse, who has ever made a mistake and they've committed adultery, if you go back and you ask them, did you ever intend for it to come to this? More than likely they're going to say no. It wasn't supposed to happen this way. I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't want this to happen, but here I am in this situation where I've been unfaithful to my spouse. Sin is deceptive. It is progressive, it spreads, and it grows, and it bears fruit. Just like righteousness does. Just like choosing the right thing bears fruit, so also does sin. So this morning, let's be encouraged to pursue God fully and wholly, because if we don't, it's going to bear fruit. If not in this life, if we get away with it in this life and no one knows about the secret part of myself that I've hid away